So they decided to form the Society for AIDS in Africa. And this was formed in 1989 in DRC. Since then, the Society for AIDS in Africa has then, every 2 years, they've organized a conference called Icasa, which is the International Conference on AIDS and STIs. And this is such a conference. 2 years ago, we had the same conference in Durban. So it has been every 2 years we've had this Icasa. This year, Your Excellency, we have already registered 4,500 people who are attending this particular conference, both virtually and physically. And we are pleased that when we started with the First Ladies. We started in Victoria Falls, with the First Lady, HIV from their mother. The PMTCT is something that has to be emphasized. And our First Ladies articulated that very, very well. And we are pleased that at least 8 African countries of First Ladies were represented. They were all there. So we are, is to look at the science. When you fight is what is being done. That's the first thing. So whatever treatment we get, whatever advices we get from the technical people is based on science. The second issue is that we base it on the communities. The communities must lead. And when you say communities, we tell them what to do. But if you go to the communities, they will tell you what affects them. And that always helps us. So communities are very, very key. These communities include people living with HIV. Communities, we're talking about all diverse type of people. We're talking about partners, donors, talking of leaders in the communities, like traditional leaders. All those people come together, and indeed they are what constructs our way forward. The third axiom is leadership. We must always have leadership when we fight HIV. And I'm glad Your Excellency have led from the front. The political will is definitely there, and it's really demonstrated by you being here. And as Society for AIDS in Africa, I would like to thank you very heartily for engineering that Icasa comes to Zimbabwe. And it has come in full force. You won the bid. I really want to thank the government of Zimbabwe, sir, that you have done well. You are supporting us. You are pushing all the resources that are needed, the security, the protocols. Everything is in place. And we are, I'm sure, going to have a resounding successful Icasa. TB and HIV are very related. HIV. Now we know also heavily targeted as Icasa as malaria. So they are also related. So we fight HIV, TB, malaria, hepatitis B, and this, I think, is the comprehensive approach that we want. Finally, Your Excellency, we need to tell our youths who that dividend is where HIV is grown most. We go back to what we used to do. Behavioral change, condom use, the very basic things that we used to do to prevent HIV. And that youth must go back to, because it's now being compounded by alcohol abuse and drug abuse. So now HIV, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, all those things must be packaged appropriately for the youth so that they're able to fight HIV in reality. Finally, we have here satellites, meetings. We have plenaries, that will be about 23 plenaries. We have abstracts that are over 800. Of our scientists, our researchers, our communities. We have a huge community village outside, where the communities from all over Zimbabwe and around can go there and exercise what they know about HIV and what they think can help us with HIV. We also have, and I think this is very, very important, sessions like these ones, plenaries, but also special sessions, where we think that people have got something very special to offer, are given a platform to talk and share with us. So let me apologize again, Your Excellency, for the salutations, that were quite mixed up, but it happens. But in the whole, I'm pleased that this has been good, and I hope that we will have a very fruitful Icasa 2023 in Harare. Thank you. Obrigada.
Thank you very much, Dr. Parere Nyatwa. Sir President, he was saying he is a president with a small p, just to separate him from our excellencies.
Is the 22nd International Conference on AIDS and STIs in Africa that is taking place here at the Harare International Conference Center. And shortly we expect President Emmerson Mnangagwa to officially open the conference. That has attracted the attention of the whole world. We are talking about more than 5,000 delegates who are attending this year's Icasa 2023 conference. Of course, the preparations to this big conference having started way back as Zimbabwe prepared to host Icasa 2023. My name is Justin Mahlahla and I'm joined here by Bengani Ngube. Bengani, this is quite a big event. We are looking at Zimbabwe hosting Africa and the rest of the world in terms of the stakeholders who are discussing various issues to do with how to address the HIV and AIDS pandemic and end HIV and AIDS by 2030.
Yebo, Justin njengokukhuluma kwakho singapha eHarare International Conference Center lapho okuqhutshwa khona umhlangano we-International Conference on AIDS and STIs in Africa, Icasa. Lo mhlangano, Justin, ungenwa ngamaqula edlula inkulungwane ezinhlanu 5,000 bevela emazweni achiyeneyo besiza ngapha. Sikhangela njalo ukuthi lo mhlangano ukhangela njalo imikhuhlane egoqela phakathi AIDS kanye leminye imikhuhlane ethelelwana ngokuhlangana emacansini. Justin, sokulebeleka kutatati koyo kuno kwa Harare International Conference Center kunshangano wechimakumi maviri notubiri 22 we International Conference on AIDS and STIs in Africa. Kulingwa kuti malwalira yaya anokolera kuwapera kunosika mugole lya 2030. Izina ndibengani Ngube tikwenda kale tilingira kaluntuka mili weshango komede maso Mnangagwa vanojula kunshangano yoyo zwimo momolao. Justin.
Certainly, we are expecting President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is here, accompanied by the two Vice Presidents, General Retired Dr. Constantino Chiwenga, together with Colonel Retired Kembo Mohadi, who are here with the Minister of Health and Childcare, Dr. Douglas Mombeshora, and the President of Icasa 2023, that's former Health and Childcare Minister, Dr. David Parenyatwa, together with the stakeholders and other ministers of health from across the African continent. We have gathered here together with those who are into advocacy, policy formulation, and many other leaders of several organizations that play a role in terms of educating the communities about HIV and AIDS. And of course, the theme also for this year, as you can see from the background, that's AIDS is not over. Address inequalities, accelerate inclusion and innovation. And I've understood from the presentations that we have had so far that it's about involving communities.
Yebo, Justin, njengokutsho kwakho sinanzelele njalo ukuthi kulomhlonitshwa umongameli wakule Mozambique umnumzana Philippe Nyusi laye ukhona ukuthi azoba ngumfakazi wesehlakalo esikhulu. Justin, nxa sikhangela njalo ukuthi yona Icasa ihamba njalo ngendikimba njalo lembaqa ezintathu, sikhangela njalo ukuthi kube lobungcwethi eze science, kube lokuthi abantu bezigabeni bazisebenzele njalo lokuthi kube lezinye indlela zokusebenzela njalo ezokutshintsha indlela zokuziphatha ikakhulu kwabasakhulayo. Kule nhlelo ezehlukeneyo okumele ziphathwe kumbe amahlandla esingathi mathathu. Ukhulumile njalo umongameli we-Society for AIDS in Africa njalo engumongameli we-Icasa 2023 uDr. Parenyatwa. Ukhuluma njalo wathi kube kwahapa lempumelelo ikakhulu nxa sikhangela igciwane le-HIV le-AIDS kukhangela ukuthi ukhulumile njalo wathi abantu abafika bona 3,000 ngeviki kungakabi lemithi kodwa kathesi sewuke kwaba lenguquko ngamanyathelo asithe athathu. Justin.
Certainly, Bengani, progress has been made in terms of how Zimbabwe is managing the HIV and AIDS pandemic. We continue giving you updates from the HICC. This is Icasa 2023.
Also the leadership. We will get there, Yolanda.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to stand before you today as we gather for the Icasa 2023 conference. This year we come together under the powerful theme, AIDS is not over. Addressing inequalities, accelerating inclusion and innovation with communities leading. The theme for this conference resonates deeply with the current situation for people living with HIV. It highlights the urgent need to not only make progress in combating HIV and AIDS, but it also emphasizes the importance of addressing inequalities and accelerate the inclusion of people left behind, such as key population, young people, children to gap and AIDS care by 2023. We find ourselves at a crucial juncture where our collection efforts are the key shaping a brighter future. Speaking of the future, more than 4,700 children are born with HIV annually in Zimbabwe, a situation that health officials are working on it to bring under control by encouraging early testing of pregnant women and scaling up the triple elimination of mother-to-child transmission, EMTCT. About 30% underdiagnosed children eventually die by the age of 2 years. We will see in this day age babies that are not tested for HIV. If you take 100 children born with HIV and parents are unaware, in this year of the life, we lose 30 of them. This is how bad it is. By 2 years of age, if you do not do anything about it, we lose another 30. Because of lack of testing and treatment, a delayed diagnosis is a serious issue in the country. These children will die. If not, they grow up, they will ill, and they will develop meningitis, which affects their development. Key population as the world celebrates the turn of tide on HIV, with many countries making remarkable progress towards ending AIDS. Key populations in Africa are seized with perpetual strife and suffering. We contend with human rights application, a surge of anti-gender and anti-human rights and anti-homosexual legislation. Allies are thin and are far, and the HIV pandemic continues to ravage our countries. Rates of new infection in the past decade have continued to escalate for MSM, transgender, and persons with progress has been made for palpable. And yet again, as we speak, despite enforcement of an engaged anti-homosexual bill, Uganda received a full grant of GC7 grant despite calls by communities redirect funding towards addressing these structural barriers that procedure equitable access to HIV services. It feels like we are shouting in the desert. We take this opportunity for candid conversation to ask, demand of allies to walk a mile in our shoes. To understand that pain of inequality cut deeper in the skin of the marginalized, creating a huge reserve of them and us. We know we can do better if solidarity was genuine and frank. About youth and women, girls, people with disabilities, over the years, significant strides have been made in the battle against HIV and AIDS. However, this fight is far from ever. It demands our continuous dedication, innovation, collaboration. By accelerating progress, we can ensure that the goals have been achieved swiftly and effectively. We must move forward with a sense of urgency, leaving no one behind, providing access to life-saving treatments and prevention methods to all those in need. Building resilience is equally important. As we face a rapidly changing landscape in the field of HIV and AIDS, we must anticipate and adapt to the evolving challenges that arise. Our resilience lies in our ability to learn from past experiences, embrace new technologies, and empower communities affected by HIV and AIDS. By building resilience, we stand any obstacles that come our way and guarantee the sustainability of our efforts for generations to come. The Icasa 2023 conference serves as a platform of knowledge to exchange, collaborate, and introspection. We must seize the opportunity to share insights, foster partnership, and strengthen our resolve to fight against HIV/AIDS together. We can amplify our impact and ensure that progress is not hindered by any barriers, whether they are social, economic, or cultural. Let us be reminded that our work extends beyond this conference walls. It expands to clinics, health facilities, community spaces, and countries across the globe. We must engage policymakers, healthcare providers, presidents, researchers, and civil society organizations in our pursuit to end AIDS by 2030. By uniting our voices and resources and the civil society organizations in our pursuit to end AIDS by 2030, diversity of young women and girls, people with disabilities, women, key population, and all those affected by this devastating disease. As we gather here today, let us renew our commitment to the cause. Let us revolute prevention strategies, enhance access to treatment, and eliminate stigma and discrimination and criminalize towards associated with HIV and AIDS. Let us address inequalities, knowing that time of the essence, and let us accelerate inclusion, innovation, recognizing that our ability to adapt and overcome will redefine our success in the face of future challenges. Together, we have power to transform lives, communities, and leaders. Let us leave the conference not only inspired, but equipped with the tools, knowledge, and renewed determination to create a world free from stigma, discrimination, criminalized, because now we will end AIDS by 2023. Thank you all for unwavering commitment to this vital cause. Let us embark on this journey of progress and resilience together. Let the communities lead. Let the communities lead. Let the communities lead. Thank you. So, I have So here I need to submit the statement with community's priorities to Memo Winnie Painema.
That is a powerful statement, powerful action as well from Ms. Bianyima. Thank you very much, Yolanda, for clearly articulating the community issues, community demands, community needs. Indeed, when communities lead, ending AIDS by 2030 will be a reality, and who knows, we might do it earlier. We continue with our program. We heard earlier on that for us to win the fight against HIV and AIDS, We also need to fight TB, malaria, as well as hepatitis B. So for now, we are going to hear from Professor Adrian Hill in terms of malaria vaccines in Africa, a reality in Africa. Prof. Could we have sound on the video? As they are sorting out the sound, I think let's continue with the program. And we have Dr. Natalia Kanem. It's a video as well. Oh, Dr. Kanem is actually here. So Dr. Natalia has a video as well. So let's have the sound for the video for the Prof and Dr. Natalia sorted, and we continue with the program. We will now hear remarks from the Regional Office for Africa of the World Health Organization, that's WHO-AFRO, and I would like to call upon Dr. Matsidiso Rebecca Moeti to come and address us. Dr. Moeti. Thank you very much. Yes, we are now going to watch Professor. He's online. So we are going to watch Professor Adrian Hill, who's going to talk about malaria vaccines in Africa, a reality in Africa.
Thank you very much. Can I go there? Can you hear me? Yes, great. Okay. So I'm going to talk about a good news story on malaria vaccines, which research said predicts more success in other vaccines. So just so you know that as of April, malaria vaccines are being rolled in Africa, all over, not in a trial setting, but for the exciting news on the direct role of WHO.
I think we can cut the video since it's inaudible. We will proceed as technical staff is sorting out. I would now to call upon again Dr. Matsiti Somoeti to come and address us.
Mnangagwa of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Your Excellency President Philip Nyusi of Zimbabwe, Honorable Ministers of other sectors, Dr. David Parirenyatwa, the Icasa 2023 President, for her very inspiring sharing of her views with us. Me for East and Southern Africa, my colleague, the Chair of the Society for AIDS in Africa, Dr. Luke, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. WHO for the invitation to be here. I'm here with a number of colleagues, including our country representative, colleagues from our headquarters, our regional office and country offices. Thank you, Your Excellency. And on a personal note, being a child, first of all, I joined WHO when the regional office had been evacuated to Zimbabwe when there was a crisis in the Republic of the Congo. Maybe WHO being here encouraged me to look for a job in that organization. And my association in Francistown, I used to go to Bulawayo to the dentist. So that tells me in Zimbabwe, working with WHO, when we worked on the 3x5 initiative to increase access to treatment for people living with HIV/AIDS, where many. We have collectively, it's already been said, made tremendous progress in addressing the multifaceted suffering and devastation at the personal, family, national, and continental level caused by the HIV pandemic, one of the greatest health crises, worst and highest HIV prevalence country at that time, Botswana, at international conferences in the 1980s and 1990s. I really partners who have made the effort for having brought us this far. The region is home to 2/3 of people living with HIV and AIDS. Of course, it translates, but repeated by themselves, the statistics hide the individual stories, the tragedies, the hopes, and the heroic courage. People like Dudu Dlamini, the thought that living among them, vaccinated for COVID-19, who used her story to fight and communication of it being vaccinated, who offered her house as a venue stopped by the COVID-19. To her, some who worked as leaders at the nationalities in this, of all, is in denial. It's the president of a very powerful investment in a communities have been able to increase access to antiretroviral therapy and care, as I said, to antiretrovirals, and also into the reach of health services or national progress, between by 48%. 80% of those, and even surpassed the 95 target. This achievement is proved yet again that high-level political leadership in HIV/AIDS control makes all the difference. Another major factor in successful HIV management is the integration of services. Here also, Zimbabwe has led and shown us good examples. We've seen comprehensive packages of quality family planning services such as contraceptives, HIV prevention and treatment services in an environment free of stigma and discrimination. We've also seen catching up happen in West and Central Africa because they were less severely affected than Eastern Southern Africa. That work had to be purposefully done, and we're very encouraged by the progress that has happened. The response to HIV has evolved in an increasingly complex environment, amplified by the pandemic, also amplified by the impacts of climate change. We've seen how resources have shifted or are shifting and drew their attention to health systems gaps and further exposed disparities and inequalities among vulnerable populations. I'm really encouraged that we in WHO have re-emphasized the importance of primary health care as a route towards universal health coverage. And we know that primary health care cannot function without strong and effective connection, engagement with communities. So again, emphasizing the important role of the people who are affected, the people who have influence at the community level. This cannot be done only by doctors and scientists in the health systems of our countries. I'm very encouraged that there's a conversation going on now among the global health initiatives, the Global Fund, Gavi, and others, around how to finally work together, integrate their efforts, and target the health systems right down to the primary health care and community levels in our countries, work on mobilizing community health workers, but importantly, make the connection with people affected and communities so that we really have a comprehensive and more effective response to HIV and AIDS. We've been reminded already eloquently by the dancers, by our colleague who spoke earlier, that AIDS is not over. Because with the increase in access and uptake of life-saving antiretrovirals, our focus now needs to be, in addition, on preventing new infections. That means focusing and working with key populations, with adolescents and young women, with sex workers, with men who have sex with men, with injecting drug users, transgender women and people, prison populations, and ensuring that the many barriers that they continue to face in accessing health services are eliminated. We need to collectively do more, including reviewing and reforming the legislation and policies that create barriers to evidence-based interventions and services. So I'd like to thank all the people that are directly affected that I have named for their courage and their innovations that they have fostered and that they sometimes have had to push very, very hard in difficult circumstances in countries. We urge that the lessons that they have learned and are sharing with us be taken on board as we work to overcome inequity in health. They need a place in decision-making mechanisms from the local level right up to the highest level in countries and advising in international actors. We must do more to ensure that the voice and influence of people affected directly is mobilized, is listened to, and is learned from in our actions at all levels. AIDS is not over because we must leverage innovations, including new treatment regimens, new prevention approaches, and vaccines supported by research that includes the needs of resource-limited settings. And it's critical that these and technology be urgently scaled up and adapted to our context in the African region. This includes gene therapy, which I spoke about earlier and was very touched by the reaction of a person living with HIV. Self-testing technology, expanded access to pre-exposure prophylaxis, and the use of technology and artificial intelligence, digital technology, in all sorts of ways. It offers so much possibility. We saw the speed with which COVID-19 tools were developed, approved, and used. So it's possible. What is needed is the will of all of us, from the highest political level, the health leaders, and the communities that are affected. It is possible. The successful clinical trials of new malaria vaccines, I think they've already been mentioned, are another example, so I will not go into that. I'd just like to commit to you that as WHO will continue to engage with our member states within the broader partnerships to provide policy and strategic direction and technical support and resources to end the HIV epidemic. Working with diverse stakeholders, with governments, with communities, with researchers, with scientists, and with funding partners, and advancing South-South cooperation, we shall sustain our commitment to end the epidemics of HIV and other communicable diseases. That way, the struggles of our colleague Yolanda, of people like Tendai, the Dorothys, the Bios, who live the daily drama of this epidemic, in fact pandemic, would see a brighter future. I'd like on behalf of WHO to wish everyone, all my colleagues and friends who are here from our many years of association, a very productive and stimulating conference. Thank you very much for your attention, and we look forward to working with you to implement the decisions made here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moeti, for those remarks. It's now time for us to hear from the United Nations Executive Director and Undersecretary, that's Ms. Winnie Byanyima. She's going to give us remarks from the Joint United Nations Program on HIV and AIDS, that's UNAIDS.
Thank you, Director of the Program. Your Excellency, the President of Zimbabwe, President Mnangagwa, Your Excellency, Filippo Jacinto Nyusi, President of Mozambique, Your Excellencies, the two Vice Presidents of Zimbabwe, Honorable Ministers present here, Honorable Dr. Parire Nyatwa, the Icasa President, my colleagues, regional directors of the United Nations, WHO and UNFPA, Chidi and Lydia, civil society and communities represented here so well by Ms. Yolanda Munyengwa, the UN Family, Excellencies Ambassador, Jambo, Jambo, bonjour, hola, bon dia, greetings. It's a great honor. It's a great honor to address Icasa at the opening session. Excellencies, I bring you the greetings of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and his Deputy Secretary General, Her Excellency Amna Mohammed, our sister. Icasa is a moment for us to gather, to take stock on progress towards the 2030 SDG goal of ending AIDS as a public health threat, and to consider future directions and sustainability of the response. This meeting brings together so many inspirational leaders, these leaders of the struggle to end AIDS. Excellency Presidents, We are a movement. We are a movement like ZANU-PF, like Frelimo. Our war is to end that, is against that virus, the HIV virus. The vanguard of our movement are people living with HIV. They are the activists who work every day on the ground. That is the vanguard of our HIV movement. We are health workers, we are scientists, philanthropists, governments. There are around 5,000 of us who have gathered here in Harare or online for this meeting, committing to continue in our struggle to end AIDS. That is our power. We are a movement. I'm delighted that at this session is being held in Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe is one of the countries making the fastest progress in the world. It's right that we are here. And so I salute you, Your Excellency Mnangagwa, President of Zimbabwe. I salute your spouse, First Lady, Dr. Xenia Mnangagwa, whom I met recently in Victoria Falls, for your sustained leadership and engagement in the response. Let us take stock of where we are now. And in doing so, it's right that we celebrate some amazing successes of this great country. 78% reduction of new infections in the last 13 years. This is the highest decline in the Eastern and Southern African region. And that is the region making fastest progress. The treatment scale-up that has led to 64% decrease in AIDS-related deaths. That's one of the highest. And Zimbabwe's achievement of our midterm targets, which we call 95, 95, 95. You don't have to know what that means. You just need to know that midway towards the 2030 goal, there are some targets for treatment, and that Zimbabwe hit them well before 2025. These are big achievements. This progress is a result of a formidable partnership, a partnership between the government, between communities, civil society, and between global solidarity of partner governments. The partner governments are mainly the United States through PEPFAR and other major donors through the Global Fund. I must not forget, too, the foundations, such as the Gates Foundation and others. It's this partnership that's driven this success. So well done. Going to the region, I'm so proud to say that there are 5 countries, including Zimbabwe, that have also already achieved those midterm targets of 2025. Botswana, Eswatini, Rwanda, and Tanzania. 16 other countries are close to them, also heading towards achieving the midterm targets, meaning that we could end AIDS as a public health threat in those countries by 2030. So that's good news to celebrate, but all is not well. As we take stock, I also want to turn to the challenges. We have saved 3.4 million lives of children from AIDS by putting them on, by stopping mother-child transmission and by putting children on treatment. But while we have 83% of all adults living with HIV on treatment, we only have 55% of children living with HIV on treatment. We are leaving children behind. In West and Central Africa, only 37% of all children living with HIV are on treatment, meaning the majority are not and will die. This is an inequality for children. Globally, 30 million people are on treatment. But 9.2 million others are not on treatment. And why? Who are they? Let's unpack that. When we unpack that, 1.3 million new infections globally last year, over 50% of them were right here in Africa. Why Africa? When you look at the deaths too, majority of the deaths were here in Africa. Why Africa? I'll come back to that. Why is it our continent? In 2022, if we look at those who are newly infected here in our own region, 63% of new infections were of adolescent girls and young women. That's serious. The face of new infections are our girls, our daughters, and young women. 3,100 girls aged between 15 and 24 acquire HIV every week right here on our continent. This is not the case elsewhere. So why? Inequality. AIDS is an injustice of inequalities. When you look at all those who are newly infected, look at those who have died, you will see that they face inequalities, and that is why they can't access prevention and treatment that are quite available. Let's talk about the girls. There is a culture of male domination and male control over women's bodies that runs right from the family level through public institutions. Sexual violence is tolerated by our societies. Early marriage is practiced by many of our communities. These are examples of what is driving HIV. The lack of control, the domination that leads to lack of control over one's body. This is important. This is social norms. Social norms are our own. It is us who can change them. It's the whole of society that must change them. It isn't just civil society. It is civil society, it is governments, it's companies. We all must move towards gender equal norms, non-violent social norms. That is the most important way to protect. But also public policies. Our public policies do not equalize. They widen existing inequalities. Let me give you an example. UNESCO has estimated that around the world, there are 129 million girls out of school, including 97 million not in secondary school. Most of these are in Africa, by the way. What does that mean? School is the best protection from HIV, from sexual violence. School is the space where a girl is protected up to the time she's an adult. If she's not in school, she's not safe. But why aren't our governments rolling out free universal secondary education for the protection of our girls and for all the other gains that we get from public education? It's a public policy issue. Every time a woman dies in childbirth, every time a girl dies in childbirth or in an unsafe abortion, this is a failure of public policy. Because if public policy puts a priority on women's lives, we shouldn't have a woman dying in childbirth. She will be taken care of from the time she conceives to the time she delivers her baby. So public policies, when they don't prioritize the lives of women and girls, that is what you get, rising infections amongst girls and young women. Take sexual and gender-based violence. We have laws against them. Yes, we do. But our institutions that should prevent and that should address it when it happens, the law and order, the judiciaries, these are often not with enough resources or capacity to tackle this challenge of sexual and gender-based violence. So it goes unpunished. Impunity leads to more and more again, more and more lack of safety for girls and young women. So we have to work on the public policies to equalize for girls and women in the society, tackle sexual violence, keep the girls in school, and all this. That's why we are working with 15 African countries that have decided to roll out ambitiously universal secondary education and put in place the policies that will keep a girl safe in school. UNAIDS, UNESCO, UNFPA, UNICEF, UN Women, and us UNAIDS are supporting these 15 governments that have made these commitments. I invite all other governments to join this move where we bring students, parents, teachers, investors to all push in one direction that will not only reduce new infections, but will empower girls, prepare them for jobs, and a range of, make them good mothers, have safe births, and so on. So let's address the inequalities that hurt girls, and we will be on the road to reducing new infections in Africa. I want to turn to key populations, including gay men, men who have sex with men, sex workers, transgender people, people in prisons, people who inject. Governments agreed at the last high-level meeting on AIDS that they will reform those laws that drive inequality for these groups and undermine the AIDS response. Let me be clear here that every government makes its own laws for its people, and that we at the UN, we respect sovereignty. And this is a big and, we at the UN, in the joint program, we gather data, we develop strategies, we pilot programs, and we show what works to end AIDS. Here is our evidence that criminalizing LGBTQ people for who they are or who they love drives them away from HIV services. Countries that don't criminalize have made more progress on the goals of, for example, reducing HIV viral suppression. They have lower rates of HIV infection among gay men. This is the evidence we have. So the good news is this, that thank you. The good news is this, that the tide is turning. African countries are moving away from archaic laws. Here in Africa, we are seeing it. Since 2016, Angola, Botswana, Gabon, Mauritius, Seychelles, these are some of the countries that have repealed criminalizing LGBTQ people. They've joined countries like India, Singapore, Barbados, and others. So the movement is in the right direction. Some say that this is a Western agenda, but I honestly say no. It is our agenda, we Africans ourselves. I'll quote for you the Supreme Court of Mauritius, an African country. In overturning their criminal law, they wrote, I quote, that old law, which they repealed, quote, was not the expression of domestic democratic will, but was a course imposed on Mauritius and other colonies by British rule, unquote. They are colonial laws. Let's get rid of them. I urge all countries that haven't removed punitive laws against marginalized groups to do so. A first step can be to stop the arrests and prosecutions, non-enforcement of those laws. And I was very happy to visit a clinic of sex workers in Victoria Falls. I was so impressed to see that for Zimbabwe, which also criminalizes sex work, that actually the law has been reformed to a point where it isn't being enforced and sex workers are receiving services and their rates of infection have dropped. This is amazing. This is leadership. We want to see either the laws repealed or not enforced so that people can come and get what they need. So lastly, I asked, why Africa? Africa, we are behind, or rather we have the highest burden. It is not because we are bad people, we have got bad morals, as some people may want to say. No, we could fight and win, but there are some constraints that are outside our hands. Two major constraints. The financial system, international financial system, is rigged against our continent. It should be reformed. Our countries are highly indebted today, paying more to servicing the debt than to the health systems that shoulder the HIV response, all because these debts were acquired at very high interests, higher than rich countries borrow on the market. They doubled and tripled when the Ukraine war broke out, a war we had nothing to do with, but a war that resulted in a higher interest costs and lower investment in our health, and no relief, not enough relief for all those external reasons that have put us in this kind of indebtedness. Taxation, another rigged system of global corporate taxation, where we don't collect enough revenues because companies can hide their profits and put their money in tax havens. We lose billions on this continent through tax dodging. This must be reformed. African countries, they went to the UN 2 weeks ago. They pushed a motion that was passed by the majority of countries calling for a conference to discuss corporate tax reform so that we can start to get the revenues due to our people. This motion was supported by most countries of the world. Only 44 rich countries who are benefiting from the status quo opposed the motion, but it passed. So congratulations to the leaders of Africa. This conference must happen. We must rally and support it. We cannot end AIDS unless we can get the taxes that are due to us and pay for our own response. We cannot end AIDS unless we can also borrow on fair terms and get our debt also recycled when we need restructuring. So with those, I want to end on communities. Communities, we are saying let communities lead. Let's mean it. Let's mean it. It means resourcing the communities. The donors who are here, you are putting money in the response, but you have reduced the flow of resources to communities. 9 years ago, communities were getting 30% of the total resource. Today, they are getting 21%. It's declining. Invest in communities to do the work they do. Secondly, free the space for communities to work. In the last 10 years, we've seen more and more laws squeezing the space for civil society to work. Open the space. So civil society is not in the way. They are lighting the way. Civil society is not the problem, it is the solution. Let us free the space. Yes. In my organization, we are the only part of the United Nations that includes civil society from the lowest level to the highest level. They sit on our board. We are proud that they are board members governing our organization. Civil society sit on all our committees, technical committees, human rights committees. We involve civil society everywhere. And that's why I asked Yolanda to sit there with me. She was going to be the only main speaker who's not sitting right there. And that's not right. So let's mean it. Let's mean it that we empower civil society to do their work. Excellencies, thank you very much. And we take away a lot of good lessons from Zimbabwe to the rest of Africa. We will end AIDS.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Bianima. That's the United Nations Executive Director and Under Secretary, that's UNAIDS. We continue with our program, and for now we are going to have a short entertainment interlude. Thank you, Harare College of Music. I'd now like to call upon Dr. Douglas Mombeshora. He is the Minister of Health and Child Care and also Icasa 2023 Vice President, to come and give us brief remarks as well as introduce the Honorable Vice President CGDN Chiwenga. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, our Master of Ceremony, Tariro. Let me start by recognizing our President, His Excellency Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, the President of the Republic of Mozambique, President Nyusi, our Vice President, Comrade Retired General Dr. C.G.D.N. Chiwenga, our Honorable Vice President, Colonel Retired K.C.D. Mohadi, the Minister for Provincial Affairs and Devolution for Harare Metropolitan Province, Comrade Tavengwa, our Icasa 2023 President, Dr. Parrenyatwa, colleague ministers here present from Zimbabwe and from our neighboring countries and beyond, deputy ministers here present, the Chief Secretary to the President and Cabinet, Dr. M. Rishwaya, Chairman of the Public Service Commission, Dr. Vincent Ungwe, Service Chiefs here present, senior government officials, let me say all protocols observed. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, I'm very glad to see this day arriving, putting a cap on more than 1 year of processes and hard work by the organizing committees as we prepared to host Africa's Premier Health Conference. I'm very excited that Zimbabwe is hosting the International Conference on AIDS and STIs in Africa, that is Icasa, physically this year after COVID-19 imposed restrictions. Advances in science and research have made this possible as we finally scored medical successes against COVID-19. Icasa is about research and science, which I am hopeful will equip us with new with knowledge and science useful in better responding to AIDS pandemic, Ebola, and other emerging pandemics. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Zimbabwe's response to HIV has been resilient over the years, offering best practices in HIV prevention and treatment as well as domestic financing, which have led to continuous reduction of disease burden and achievement of the 95-95-95 targets. Despite these achievements, we know our way to the top is still far away. Although new infections still continue to occur, it has become very difficult to identify them, and that is why we are innovating with various risk and cohort-based mechanisms targeting most at-risk groups so that we empty the pockets of new infections. In doing this, we are also focusing on addressing inequalities and promoting inclusion so that we leave no one behind, particularly key populations. Addressing health inequalities and promoting inclusion will ensure that we promote openness in pursuit and utilization of available prevention and treatment services. This year's theme, I quote, AIDS is not over. Address inequalities, accelerate inclusion and innovation, close quote, is therefore very well placed to inform our response as that of the rest of the continent to reach the last mile in responding to HIV and other epidemics. Your Excellencies and distinguished delegates, we have put together an exciting program comprising various leadership sessions, abstracts-driven sessions, and satellites, as well as the community village that I am confident that will be beneficial to our programming and response. I'm very happy with the level of response from delegates who have registered and have applied for visas to participate in the conference. I am indeed pleased with the level of interest and the participation of our local people, some of whom will present leading abstracts and lead key discussions in various sessions and the community at large. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the government of Zimbabwe has mobilized all its systems and structures from security, banking, accommodation, transportation, health, and others to ensure a successful conference. Let me assure our delegates that our health systems are on alert to ensure that necessary services are provided as needed. At this juncture, allow me to invite our Vice President, General Retired Dr. Chiwenga, to come and introduce our guest of honor. Thank you.
Director of Ceremonies, Ms. Tariro Makanga, the President of the Republic of Mozambique, His Excellency Dr. Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, our First Lady of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Her Excellency Dr. Akusiria Mnangagwa in absentia, Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Honorable Colonel Retired Kembo Dukish Mohadi, Minister for Provincial Affairs and Devolution, Harare Metropolitan Province, Honorable Charles Tawengwa, Minister of Health and Child Care, Dr. Douglas Mombeshora, other honorable ministers here present, the 2023 Icasa President, Honorable Dr. David Parere-Nyatwa, joined the United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS, Winnie Byanyima, let me ride on all protocols. Good afternoon to you all, or a good evening. In actual fact, it's evening now. It is with great pleasure that I stand before you to introduce the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Comrade Dr. Emmerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, our guest of honor for this important occasion. Let me start by welcoming all the delegates and visitors to our country as we host the International AIDS Conference on AIDS and sexually transmitted infections in Africa. Indeed, this is a momentous occasion as Zimbabwe joins hands with other regional countries to attain universal health coverage for our people. Distinguished guests, our guest of honor has set this country on a transformative and developmental path towards the realization of an empowered and prosperous upper middle income society by 2030. To that end, health and well-being were identified as key pillars in the National Development Strategy 1, a blueprint that anchors the achievement of that vision. It is common cause that good health makes an important contribution to economic progress, as a healthy population is more productive and live longer. Through his visionary leadership, His Excellency the President, Comrade Dr. Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, noted that Icasa offers Zimbabwe an important platform to showcase our progress in response to HIV, and also learn from our brothers and sisters across the continent of Africa and beyond. The devastation caused by the recent COVID-19 and AIDS over the years has taught us to be resilient and build capacity in the entire health delivery system. Therefore, it is important that this conference comes up with innovative means to collectively improve our health system, and specifically the response to HIV and emerging epidemics. I am pleased to highlight that following the submission of our bid to host the conference, the delegation of the Society of AIDS in Africa visited Zimbabwe to conduct assessments. Although it was not mandatory to meet the President, President Mnangagwa invited the delegation to State House and had a meeting with them. He demonstrated rare leadership and made financial commitments to support the country's bid. In essence, he has made this conference a success. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me at this juncture to invite our guest of honor, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, His Excellency Dr. Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, to deliver his official opening remarks for the 2023 International Conference on AIDS and STIs in Africa. Your Excellency.
May you be seated. Our Director of Ceremonies, Comrade Dariro. I hope I'm correct. In our absentia, the First Lady of the Republic of Zimbabwe, my dear brother, the President of the Republic of Mozambique, Engineer President Jacinto Nyusi, the Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Honorable General Retired Dr. Sijiren Chwenga, Vice President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Honorable Colonel Retired KCD Mohadi, the Minister of State for Harare Metropolitan Province, Charles Tavengo, Honorable Charles Tavengo and Erika, Minister of Health and Child Care of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Honorable Dr. Mombeshora, the Executive Director, United Nations Population Fund, Dr. N. Kanem, Executive Director, UNAIDS, W. Bwanyima, Society for AIDS and Africa and Icasa 2023 President, Dr. Parenyatua David. Other honorable ministers of health from Africa who are present here. The Chief Secretary of the President Cabinet, Dr. Shwaya, senior government officials who are here. Regional Director for Africa, World Health Organization, Dr. M.R. Moeti. Development partners who are here. Distinguished conference delegates. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, it is my singular honor and privilege to address you at this official opening ceremony for the 24th International Conference on AIDS and Sexually Transmitted Infections in Africa. On behalf of the government and people of Zimbabwe, I wish to express my profound gratitude for the opportunity accorded to Zimbabwe to host this very important conference for the second time. I hope you have found the facilities and arrangements suitable for a successful meeting. In view of the growing incidences of epidemics and conflicts, coupled with the negative impact of climate change, this conference is most opportune as it allows us to reflect on our ongoing responses to HIV and AIDS at both the continental and the global levels. The theme and record, AIDS is not over, address inequities, accelerate inclusion and innovation, end of quote, is a befitting reminder on the need to remain focused and avoid complacency. We must thus keep our eyes on the ball and consolidate the milestones we have achieved over the years. The 2022 report by the United Nations AIDS clearly reflects that AIDS continues to claim lives and is a call for continued action. Regrettably, new HIV infections continue to be prevalent among our people, and our women accounted for 63% of all new infections, while new HIV infections among adolescent girls and young women remain widespread in sub-Saharan Africa. We should never relax. AIDS is not over. The pandemic remains one of the silent threats to sustainable socio-economic development. It is, however, commendable that we have made progress and positive outcomes through our robust interventions, which are infusing the hope that we can indeed eliminate AIDS. Many countries in Africa, including Zimbabwe, have already achieved the 95 fast-track targets. This is applauded. Congratulations. In case of Zimbabwe, between 2018 and 2022, our country managed to reduce new HIV infections as well as AIDS-related deaths. We are committed to addressing the gaps and the inequalities that exist in access to HIV services to sustain this progress and push back the HIV frontiers to end AIDS by 2030. It is also critically important to ensure that both adolescent girls and boys, as well as young women, have unfettered and equal access to HIV services. Equally, there is need to address HIV/AIDS pandemic holistically, including through addressing matters to do with guaranteeing food security and nutrition of our communities, beginning at the household level. Let us therefore implement robust and responsive sustainable development programs and projects to lift more of our people out of poverty and eradicate inequalities that may be triggers to new HIV infections, especially among most risk groups. Encouraging early testing and promoting adherence to treatment, as well as fighting stigma and discrimination, remain key aspects to reversing silence and untreated infections. In addition, it is imperative to sustain focus on social and cultural practices that increase risk and exposure of women and children to HIV. Ladies and gentlemen, our success of ending HIV/AIDS by 2030 is imminent. It is encouraging that the Society for AIDS in Africa have responded to the urgent realities of the time and ever-changing health environment on our continent. I therefore commend you for expanding the scope of the conference to include discussions on key thematic areas such as pathways for leadership in HIV and AIDS initiatives, building resilience and sustainable HIV prevention programming, along with other emergencies and epidemics. The recent COVID-19 and ongoing threats of Ebola, as well as other tropical diseases, have taught us the need for integration of these and other responses, underpinned by the principle of universal health coverage. As a continent, we must harness our rich and diverse flora and fauna endowments through the deployment of science, technology, and innovation to establish a vibrant African traditional medicines pharmaceutical industry in our respective jurisdictions. We must, as Africa, never shy away from building on our rich African knowledge systems and God-given resources to have scientifically viable medical products and solutions for our own domestic communities. Through such an approach, we should reverse the high disease burden and the related mortality on our motherland, Africa. For us in Zimbabwe, our national development philosophy is, in Shona, nyika inovakwa, igotongwa, igonamatirwa, nebenewai. I'll try to translate. This simply means that a country is built and it must be governed and it must be prayed for by its own people. As the people of this great continent, we must build our respective countries and proffer the solutions needed to address our own continental challenges. Others from elsewhere should come to help and complement us based on our own developmental priorities. Hence, the mantra, African solutions for African problems, must must transcend to the manner we address epidemics and other existential threats to our nations. Intra-Africa collaboration must be deepened, and the partnerships with the private sector and development partners harnessed to leap forward our response. Dear distinguished delegates, conferences, meetings, and workshops alone are not enough if they are not backed by deliberate and concrete action plans to promote and achieve HIV funding sustainability. Here in Zimbabwe, the National AIDS Trust Fund has contributed over 30% of all our treatment needs and financed the various prevention and coordination interventions. We are available to share key lessons learned through this approach to this issue. Zimbabwe is open for business and ready to welcome investments, joint ventures, partnerships, and innovations for the manufacture as well as distribution of medical equipment, medicines, and consumables, among other requirements. Finally, on behalf of the people of Zimbabwe, I once again express our gratitude to the organizers, the partners, and the supporters of this conference for giving us the opportunity to host this event. I invite you all to explore our magnificent tourism destinations and attractions, which include the mighty Victoria Falls. But that is not its correct name. That is an English name. It is called Mosio Tunya. The smoke that thunders. That is the correct name. But when we say, come and see Mosio Tunya, people don't come. But when you say, come and see Victoria Falls, they fly in. With these remarks, it is now my singular honor and pleasure to declare the 22nd edition of the International Conference on AIDS and STIs in Africa officially opened. I wish you all a memorable, successful, and productive meeting. God bless you all. I thank you.
What shall we do? Sinzinjani. What shall we do?
Thank you so much. Let me now ask our Vice President, Colonel Retired KCD Mohadi, to come and give vote of thanks. Comrade Mohadi.
Director Ceremony, Dariro Makanga, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Head of Government, and Commander of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces. Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Mozambique, Comrade Nyusi. Your Excellency, let me also acknowledge Her Excellency, the First Lady, Dr. Auxilia Mnangagwa in absentia. My colleague, Honorable General Retired Dr. CGD N. Chiwenga, the Minister of State for Provincial Affairs and Devolution for Harare Metropolitan Province, Comrade Charles Tawenga. Let me recognize all the ministers here present and those from other countries that have come to join us at this conference. Your Excellency, let me say, since all the protocols have been established before me, let me just say that allow me to ride on all the protocols that have been established. Your Excellency, they say gratitude is not the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the other virtues. I deem it a great honor, Your Excellency, indeed my privilege, to propose a vote of thanks at this 22nd edition of the Icasa conference. I wish to thank the people who contributed to the success of this conference. And first and foremost, I wish to thank most sincerely our host, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Dr. Edi Mnangagwa, for putting in place such an impressive and decent conference here at the Rainbow Towers in Harare, Zimbabwe. I've always said hosting an event of the size of and magnitude like this conference we have today is not an easy task. It takes a worm's view to attend to the details of organizing such a seamless event such as this conference. Let us appreciate that the wheels of this conference started turning a long time ago. My gratefulness should be remiss if I don't acknowledge and recognize Her Excellency, the First Lady of Mozambique. I'm told she was in Victoria Falls with our First Lady. On behalf of my fellow countrymen, and indeed on my own behalf, I would like to express my deepest appreciation of the presence of the President of Mozambique amongst us, Comrade Felipe Jacinto Nyusi. Your presence here, sir, has made this conference quite befitting. Once again, I thank you, President Nyusi and Madam Nyusi. And I hope and trust that Your Excellency, you will find time to sample out our humble facilities and find whether they are useful to your requirements. But it wouldn't be over. But the First Lady, the First Lady of Mozambique has been to Victoria Falls. I think it would also be remiss of the President of Mozambique if he doesn't go to Victoria Falls. The President, he said that Victoria Falls is a colonial name, but we use it because it brings tourists into our country. The real name is, as he said, Musiwa Tunya. We must always remember that Zimbabwe and Mozambique share a history of togetherness that stretches as far back as the liberation struggle of this country, in which Mozambican people paid supreme sacrifice. I also wish to take this opportunity, Your Excellency, to thank all the speakers at this conference and participants, without whom there would have been no conference to talk about at all. Our speakers, most importantly, our guest speaker, Dr. Mnangagwa, shared nuggets of wisdom and initiated critical conversation on issues such as mainstreaming, inclusion, equality, diversity in the control and mitigation of the impact of HIV/AIDS. The discussion from this conference will for a long time remain etched in our memories. I also wish to take this opportunity, Your Excellency, to thank our speakers for the unanimous call for strengthening domestic financing of health sectors of Africa. Such an initiative will ensure sustainable financing of programs in health. To our participants, allow me also to express my sincere gratitude to each and every one of you for making time from your busy schedules to attend this conference. Let me also, in a special way, thank the Minister of Health and Child Care, led by Dr. Mombeshora, for collaborating with other partners to ensure Zimbabwe hosted such a successful Icasa conference. I wish to convey my thanks to all our service providers, entertainers, the media, for being a part of this unique conference. Let us continue to work together in our quest to build the Africa's health sector. We say to you all, Harambe, let's pull together. We are in this together. I wish you all journey messages as you travel back to your respective countries. And to our visitors from other countries, please travel safely back. Please carry to your families our best wishes from Zimbabwe. I thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice President, for the closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our official opening ceremony. May we all rise as His Excellency and the table leave And I would like to invite Fusion Band to play for us.
Sapho Zimbabwe kulabo abasanda kusixhuma umhlangano we-Icasa 2023 usuvulwe ngokusemthethweni ngumongameli welizwe uComrade Emmerson Mnangagwa ekhuluma njalo ngalokho osuthe kwenziwa ilizwe leZimbabwe. Sizwile njalo iziphathamandla ezinye ezike zakhuluma ngamanyathelo lobuhle obuthe benziwa ilizwe leZimbabwe. Sikezezwa ngaphambilini umqondisi we-UNAIDS unkosikazi Winnie Banyima ekhuluma esithi iZimbabwe isiyenelise ukwehlisa inhlungu ezibangela igciwane le-HIV le-AIDS ngesilinganiso sokuyi-78% okuyinto encomekayo kakhulu nxa sikhangela ilizwe lonke jikelele kanye le-Afrika ngokwayo. Ukhulumile njalo ukuthi kulamanye amahlandla ayi-95% esithi iZimbabwe kodwa yona isifikise umqongolo isifikise kungakafiki umnyaka ka-2025 ngenxa yamanyathelo asethe abanjwa njalo lengxoxo ezenziwayo lekunye okwenziwayo ngokhulumende weZimbabwe. Ngaphambilini sike sakhuluma ngamanyathelo asethe athathwa elizwe leZimbabwe likhokhelwa inhlanganiso ebona igciwane le-HIV elizweni le-National AIDS Council elenhlelo ezehlukeneyo ezenziwayo ikakhulu nxa sikhangela njalo inhlelo ezenziwa ezabelweni ezetshiyeneyo. Sikhangele njalo endaweni zeMguza, sihamba njalo endaweni zeDethe, safika njalo lezinye indawo zaseWange eJambezi. Sikhangela njalo amanyathelo enziwayo okwehlisa inhlungu. Kukhangeliwe njalo ukuthi inhlanganiso leyi ekhangela ngokwegciwane le-HIV ilembaxa ezintathu eqhakathekisa njalo ubungcwethi ukusebenza ndawonye labahlolisayo kanye lalabo abaqhuba lokuthi inkokheli zomdabu labantu bezigabeni baphatheke. Okukhulunywa njalo umongameli welizwe esithi abantu yibo okumele bakhokhele. Sapho leZimbabwe sesifike emaphethelweni njalo sizaxhumana njalo kusasa. Kholisani inhlelo ezilandelayo elami igama nguBengani Ncube.